He just got where he was a nuisance. 118 police calls, police or fire calls in 120 months.
It is 4:02, and I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Moline Plan Commission. The first item on the agenda is roll call, but before we do roll call, I just want to make just a kind of a housekeeping comment. We will be having a public hearing on our agenda. The first item after roll call is the public comment. If your public comment relates to the topic that is the subject of the public hearing on accessory dwelling units, I'd ask that you please sign in so that we can make sure that we get you called up to the lectern, and we will swear in anyone who's going to be making a comment during the public hearing. So there's a public comment. There's then the public hearing during which comments about accessory dwelling units will be heard. And then there's also an opportunity for public comment at the end of the meeting. So with that, just kind of a housekeeping topic. First item on the agenda is a roll call of the commission members in the room.
Okay. Graves,
Present.
Harple,
Here.
Carter, Logan,
Here.
Moyer,
Here.
Silas,
Here.
Trevor,
Here.
and Wormuth. Here.
Okay, we do have a quorum, and then we also have a Plan Commission member, Billy Allison, who is attending remotely. Commissioner Allison, I understand that you are traveling for business.
That is correct. I'm in Springfield for work.
Okay, and so that meets the requirement for eligibility for participation electronically, remotely. Is there a motion to approve the electronic attendance of Commissioner Allison?
I move to approve the electronic attendance.
Second.
Second, okay, Commissioner Wormuth and Commissioner Trevor seconded. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? If not, the attendance of Commissioner Allison electronically is approved. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the March 27 Plan Commission meeting. Is there a motion to approve the March 27 minutes?
I'll move to approve. I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Silas, second by Commissioner Logan. Is there discussion about the minutes? Any corrections or additions to the minutes? If not, all in favor of approval of the minutes, say aye. If not, same sign. Okay, the minutes are stand approved. The next item on the agenda is public comment. And again, this section of public comment is for anything unrelated to the subject of the public hearing, which is the accessory dwelling units. Is there any, I'm sorry, Commissioner Moore?
I'm just curious procedurally, when we have remote electronic attendance, do we have to do roll calls? Or can we do?
I think we have to do roll call for anything that would call for a roll call vote. I'm not sure what you're asking.
Okay. I was just,
Oh.
I thought we had to do roll call if we had remote attendance, but I'm looking at Mr. Silverman and he's saying we're okay.
By state law, you're fine. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, and also I should say also on the attending remotely is David Silverman, who's corporation counsel with the law firm Ansel Blank. We talked to Jennifer Bizzari, who is staff. The co-room is, or you're just on kind of watching. Yeah, also in the room. So you're in both places. I didn't see anyone in the committee of the whole room, which is connected electronically. KJ Whitley from the community development staff, and then Ashley Allen is also on remotely.
Yeah, she's on our community development staff as well.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, so is there any public comment unrelated to the topic of the public hearing, which is related to accessory dwelling units? Okay, if not, then the next item on the agenda is the public hearing. So I hereby call to order a public hearing on matter 2024-02 PC to consider text amendments to the City of Moline's zoning and land development code, allowing the allowance of accessory dwelling units in the R2 zoning district, creation of development standards for its use, and further text amendments as may be required. So we'll open the public hearing with comments by staff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we're swearing in later then. You're going to swear in before the.
I swear
public
before you.
comment. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. So we've been discussing a possible accessory dwelling unit ordinance here for a few of our last plan commission meetings. I know this is something that was talked about in 2022, went to council in 2023, and the city council has, with their motion back in December, brought this matter back to the plan commission. So I've prepared a presentation here today just to kind of, we've been talking about the need for accessory dwelling units, at least staff has for a while, but I wanted to back up a little bit just because we have some new folks in the room and make sure we do kind of a macro level view of this ordinance while we're also looking at the micro level. So what is an accessory dwelling unit? It's a residential dwelling unit located on the same lot of record as a one-family detached dwelling. Provides a completely independent dwelling unit for one or more persons with a separate entrance. And by that meaning a family can live in that by the definition of family in our code. And an accessory dwelling unit shall be one of 4 approved types in our ordinance, either an attached dwelling unit actually attached to the primary residence, a coach house which would be installed above a garage, a detached ADU, which would be completely separate from the primary residence, independent of that, and then an interior ADU, which would be entirely inside of that primary residence, maybe an attic, a basement, or some other portion of the house converted to a residential dwelling unit. So this came from, I think it was 27east.com, just shows you some various ADU types and what they look like. This idea of the above garage unit, we're calling the coach house unit, but otherwise this kind of is very similar to the ADU types that we're offering. And the smaller image is kind of hard to make out, I guess, on the screen, but it kind of shows you how those integrate into the neighborhood. These are some real life examples. One from buildanadu.com, one from those kind of montage collection to the lower right are from the city of Albany, California. The one to the top right, I wish you could see a little bit better from where mine's sitting, but what I really liked about that one is it really reminded me of a Moline house. And so it kind of shows how you could do this to really look like a Moline house even, which I thought was interesting. So as I said, the city council had an action on December 12th, 2023. They introduced a draft ordinance, not a proposed council bill, but just kind of an example ordinance to introduce this discussion of ADUs to the city council, but ultimately bring it back to the plan commission, which is what we've been doing since January, I would say, as we've been kind of considering this and various aspects of what an ordinance would include, what it would be, how we would regulate it. The only real guidance we got, like I said, a proposed ordinance that was attached there, not an actual proposed council bill, but just an example ordinance. And they also gave us a little bit of guidance there that they wanted to make sure these were subject to our new rental inspection ordinance that we have now, rental licensing ordinance that we have for all rental units in the city, and that they would not be used for vacation rental units or what you would call short-term rentals, Airbnbs. So why do cities need ADUs? Why are we considering this? Why is staff supporting this idea? Number one, there's a lack of affordable housing in our community. And that's not just our community, that's all across the country. Housing prices have skyrocketed over the last few years. I'm sure everybody's aware of that. And then COVID really exacerbated that to a new level. ADUs would offer more housing type options for residents of Moline. The other thing I would say just in general is where are people going to live? When you think about your sons and daughters and where they're going to live going forward, like, do you think they're going to buy a house? And I would hope that, my kids would be able to do that. But the idea here is to get more options for housing. As most of you are probably aware, new housing starts in Moline have been down over the last several decades. Moline really peaked out population wise about 1981, 1980, early 80s. And we don't see as many new housing starts in the city of Moline. This would be a way to hopefully get some new units going in as well. They do offer, there's an aging in place component to ADUs, right? So we're offering the option for senior citizens to age in place or stay in close proximity to family. Those of you that have done, probably a few of you, but if you've ever worked for a city and you tried to do some of this zoning regulation of what we would call a mother-in-law quarters, what's really that difference between a mother-in-law quarters and an ADU, right? We would say, well, there's family living there. But what's going to happen to that in 10, 20 years? Like it's going to convert to something else. And so this is also addressing that issue. ADUs provide rental income to the owner as an investment opportunity as well. They also promote more dense development, contrary to urban sprawl. So the city's had a goal for many years since I started working here of developing south of the river. I don't really want to give up on that goal, but I think the way that goal is changing is that we've got to also reinvest in the old parts of Moline and find a new way to develop, right? And embrace new people that are coming to our community, right? We've got to adapt to changing times here. So I want to go through some of the elements of the ordinance as well here. Most of the plan commissioners have seen this, but we should, for the new folks in the crowd, talk about the actual changes we're proposing to make to the ordinance here. As I mentioned, some of these come from an ordinance from Oak Park, Illinois. That's some of the base, but we've been tweaking and changing things in this ordinance as we've gone. So the ordinance does include a amendment to the definition of accessory structure and accessory use to explicitly call out accessory dwelling units and refer to the division. We would want to make sure, as a note to my staff, that we make sure these division numbers line up with whatever the final division numbers end up being if something gets approved by the city council. So we really break down these different ADU types in the ordinance as well. This really is getting back to the definition of the ADU that I told you about earlier, but those 4 different types, right? Attaching means expanding the existing principal, I don't know why it says detached dwelling there, but exists principal dwelling. Coach house means an accessory dwelling unit over a garage, so above parking spaces that are on the ground level, and the coach house is up above that. Detached means an ADU, a freestanding ADU located on the property such that it doesn't share any walls with the single family dwelling and is not a coach house. And then interior means an accessory dwelling unit that's entirely inside of an existing primary structure. Here are some of the general locations that would apply to all ADUs in this section. Number 1, this ordinance that we're talking about, we're only talking about in the R2 district, which is the single family residential district. Accessory dwelling units must fall within one of the defined categories that I've already explained to you. The property owner must live in either the accessory dwelling unit or in the principal single family house. Only one ADU is allowed per zoning lot. And you'll have to meet not only lot coverage, if you want to construct an ADU and you come down to our office to apply for that, not only will you have to meet the building code, but you'll have to meet setbacks. You have to meet the lot coverage requirements, which are 35% in the R2 district. So what that means is you can cover any lot in the R2 district is going to be limited by 35% lot coverage, including your house, any accessory structures you have like garages or sheds, and this ADU, if you're proposing to build one. So 35% lot coverage applies to any of these, including if you want to build a garage or you want to build an ADU. An ADU cannot be used as a short-term rental or vacation rental unit, which is how we define that in our rental code. We continue to look through the rental code to see if there's any changes we need to make if we're going to allow ADUs. My staff and my rental staff too have looked at it. We really still don't think we need a change here. I mean, a rental unit is really defined as anything that's rented for 30 or more days. A vacation rental unit is defined as anything that's 29 days or less. We're saying that an ADU cannot be used as a vacation rental unit, but it will be subject to the requirements of the rental housing program. An ADU has to have its own separate entrance. That's any ADU unit type. So if you're converting your basement, you're still going to have a separate entrance out of the basement for your ADU. Goes without saying, really anywhere in your house that you would install that. You're gonna have to meet the building code, but you're also gonna have to have this separate entrance. No additional parking requirements for an ADU. I know that's a strong feeling of this plan commission. I feel like we're also on our list this year to talk about other parking minimums that we feel are getting in the way of development. So no additional parking would be required for an ADU. When converting an existing detached or attached garage to an ADU, the required parking for the principal structure must be replaced on site. That's 3 parking spaces for a single family home. Usually that's accommodated by the driveway and the garage is where you're meeting that requirement. Accessory dwelling units shall not have a separate driveway or curb cut. And then the final general requirement here, they shall be incidental to the single-family dwelling, use of the lot in terms of location, appearance, and shall not alter the character of the principal structure. The architectural style, exterior materials, and colors of the accessory dwelling unit shall be compatible with the principal structure. So that's the language that we have in there right now. In case anybody's, wants to, that's kind of subject to all this, right? If we're proposing any changes today or tweak, this is currently what you have in front of you. And then the specific ADU types have some of their own requirements. Some of this is a little bit of redundancy, I feel like. And the reason we did this was just in case somebody's taken our ordinance out, we felt like it couldn't hurt to kind of remind them in some cases that, hey, by the way, maybe we've already said this in the section, but we're putting this back in front of you again, that there are some requirements here. So other than an interior dwelling unit, every ADU is going to be only allowed if the lot is a minimum 6,500 square feet in area. You've seen the maps that kind of show where those lots are in Moline. And I know those are included. If we want to put that up here, we could put that up there later. But for a coach house, minimum of 6,500 square feet, must be located in a detached garage on the upper floor, above parking spaces located on the ground level. Shall contain no more than 1 dwelling unit, must be designed to be compatible as referenced by that section I just read. Coach house cannot exceed the height of the principal dwelling. The chair and I were talking about this. I think that's already in the code personally, but it can't hurt to have it in this section to emphasize that it needs to be no taller than the house. And then we'll want to talk about this when my presentation's over. You gave some guidance last time in terms of side setbacks and rear setbacks. And the side setbacks we talked about for detached ADUs, I have applied to the coach house garage as well. Just in case somebody builds a new garage with a coach house up above, I felt like we would want those same setbacks that you included on detached. Now, you may want to tweak this or change it, but that's the way I proposed it to you right now, is that the side setback would be 5 feet with a total of 12 when you factor in both those side setbacks. So if you're down to 5 feet on one side, you got to have at least 7 on the other. That's similar to what we would have for a principal structure. And then the rear setback would be 10 feet. If you remember, there was kind of some talk last time about, well, what's on the other side of that rear lot line? Is it an alley? Is it a street? I think the suggestion from Plan Commission was that, well, if it's right of way there, we're not as concerned. We want the 10 feet if there's a neighbor there. We want some more spacing and some privacy from the neighbor's house. But hey, if there's if there's not a neighbor there, that we really maybe didn't need a 10-foot setback. I can tell you that as I tried to sort that out and how to have that language be, the way I propose it right now is that it wouldn't really be looking at where the rear lot line is. I think we want to it wouldn't be looking at what is on the other side of that rear lot line. I've just made it 5 feet on the side, 10 feet on the rear. And so we can talk about if anybody wants to make changes to that. But it was getting very hard from the staff perspective to say, okay, well, if there's an alley there, it's going to be this, or if it's a public street, now it's going to be this, when maybe with it being a public street, I'm just going to tell you there could be a front setback along that street based on how the lot's been, or how the street's been subdivided. For a detached, we have many of the same requirements, right? 6,500 square feet in lot area. This could be a newly constructed building, or you could convert an existing accessory building, but you're going to have to meet the building code. And I can tell you that it's going to be kind of difficult to take an existing garage that's built on a slab and convert it into a dwelling unit just based on, you're not going to have a foundation. How are you going to protect those utilities from frost? So meeting the building code is going to be something with any ADU that's going to be a hurdle to get over. And it's just, we do need these units to be safe. And so they certainly are going to need to meet the building code. So an ADU, detached ADUs have to be 1,000 square feet of livable space or less. That's the limitation we put on the size of the ADU, was 1,000 square feet. Now, some people might think that and think that's very large. The size of that unit is going to be probably more so limited by lot coverage, the size of the house that's there now, because it can't be bigger than the house, it can't be taller than the existing house. It's got to meet setbacks, and it's got to conform to 35% lot coverage. So we're putting 1,000 square feet. If this ADU was able to meet all those requirements, you had a large house and you had a lot of land to work with. In that case, that ADU is going to be compatible with the house because we already have a large house there to begin with. They must be located in the rear or side of a principal detached dwelling. So even if they have enough room in the front to meet the setback, we're not allowing those in the front yard. Shall contain no more than one dwelling unit. Like I said, that's a little redundancy there. Must be designed to be compatible with the primary dwelling unit. Cannot exceed the height and maximum lot coverage. Once again, I put those setbacks in as 5 feet off the side with a total of 12 and 10 foot off the rear, period. But we can talk about that if you want to propose changes to it. The distance between the nearest point of any portion of the new ADU and the principal dwelling must be 6 feet or greater. That's typical with any garage we would permit or any major accessory structure we would permit. Is we would make sure we have 6 feet between the foundations.
Mr. Mathias, I'm going to interrupt you. Sorry, just because we have somebody else who just joined and I don't want to have you stand in the back. So if you're intending to speak, if you would just sign in, please. And there's some seating back over in the corner there. So I hate to leave somebody standing.
And we also have an extra room across the hall in the committee of the whole. If anybody wants to just have some more space, you can listen to the meeting from over there too, and we'll eventually call your name if you're signed in.
Thank
you. For the attached ADU, also have the 6,500 square foot and lot area requirement. 1,000 square foot of livable space limitation, must be in the rear or side of the single family dwelling and meet principal structure setbacks. Those, once again, are 5 feet with a total of 12, a rear yard of 30 feet, and a front setback of 25 feet. So those are the setbacks for a principal dwelling, a house. And so this is being attached to the house, it would have to meet that. The new addition should be designed to be compatible with the principal dwelling. And then finally, the last ADU type we have is interior. It's permitted on a lot. We're not going to have the 6,500 square foot lot limitation as we have it proposed right now for an interior ADU. So there wouldn't be a minimum lot size requirement for that. And it must have a separate entrance. As we've talked about too, I think the difficulty in the interior dwelling unit, it's definitely possible, but you're going to have to meet the building code there. So that's going to, it's not really as simple as just saying, hey, this room is now going to be an ADU. Like, you're going to have to convert that, have your kitchen, your bath, and then, your bedrooms. And then you're going to have fire separation, have your utilities dealt with, have your HVAC separated, things like that. We'll also require a restricted covenant. So when somebody comes in to apply for an ADU, they will sign a restricted covenant that will also be recorded at the county. The main purpose of this covenant being that they agree to use either the ADU or the house. So they own this property, they have to reside in either the ADU or the principal structure. And then when the ADU, at the request of property owner and upon an inspection, find that ADU has been removed, we can always go and, get this released so that the property could be sold later. But the idea of doing a restrictive covenant is so that this is recorded. Anybody who purchases this property is going to know that, number one, there's an ADU there, and I have to reside in one of these two units to have the ADU there. We've also added some provisions on enforcement here. I did receive a question about the fine not less than $1,000 and not more than $1,500. This was in the ordinance that was attached to the council action. So staff really haven't, we didn't provide those numbers. I think the intent here was to beef up, to have more of enforcement mechanism that we would typically have, maybe to start the fines higher. But enforcement, enforcement's not an easy thing either. I'm not going to lie to anybody. I mean, it takes a lot of, it's one reason to have the restrictive covenant, I feel like, is because that's when you can find something signed by that property and say, no, look, you agreed to do this. Here's the site plan. Here's what you said you were going to do, and you're not doing it. We'll make enforcement easier. So the one thing I want to go over that we haven't gone over yet is criteria for review of any text amendment. And that's any rezoning or text amendment needs to meet our approval criteria. There's 7 approval criteria. I'm going to focus on the 4th one, which is the comprehensive plan in the most detail. But whether the existing text or zoning designation was an error at the time of adoption, that's a no. The second criteria, whether there's been a change in character in the area or throughout the city due to installation of public facilities, other zone changes, new growth trends, deterioration, development transition, et cetera. I would say, yes, we've definitely seen a change in our housing market. As I said before, we're certainly experiencing a housing crisis throughout the country. We've seen increased housing cost. In the city of Moline specifically, I think we've seen a lack of available housing just in general. If you want to buy a house and move into town, it's a little tough right now because people are staying in their houses, and it's harder to move with interest rates the way they are, construction prices the way they are. And we also have a lack of housing choice as well. Whether the proposed rezoning is compatible with the surrounding area defining characteristics of the proposed district. Are there adverse impacts on the capacity or safety of the portion of street network influenced by the rezoning, parking problems, environmental impacts that the new zone may generate, such as excessive stormwater runoff, water, air, or noise pollution, excessive nighttime lighting, or other nuisances. So staff feels this is compatible use with the district. And we've taken, working with the plan commission here, we feel we've taken steps to minimize or mitigate possible nuisances that would be associated with this. So we've been talking about ideas like, how far away from the property line should it be? How is it going to be compatible with the neighborhood? Now, we may hear from the residents concerned about parking and the street network. I think, our opinion from staff has been that we don't anticipate problems with parking because we feel like problems with parking are really kind of, in my experience, a household, it's each household provides a different strain on the parking capacity, and it typically is done by like how many drivers you just have. If you have a lot of teenagers that are driving, that's usually going to be the biggest parking situation in a neighborhood, it seems like to me. The 4th criteria is to look at conformance with and furtherance of the implementation of the goals and policies of the comp plan. So these are the 8 goals of the comp plan. I highlighted the 2 that I feel like pertain to what we're talking about today, and that's housing development and neighborhood stabilization, and it's creating quality places. And those are the 2. I didn't expect all of you to have your comp plans with you today, but I did leave 2 printouts of these goals on your at your space there. So they kind of detail when we're talking about housing development and neighborhood stabilization, what do we mean? And so these are some of those things that are called out in the comp plan. Now, this is an old comp plan. It was done, they were working on it in 1999, 2000. We're due, as you know, for a new comp plan, which we're going to start working on this year. But these are some of the goals that were in that plan. Under housing development and neighborhood stabilization, it was to promote neighborhood well-being and improve appearance, protect neighborhood identity while dealing with land use change through flexible zoning standards, enhance code enforcement, which is something that we've done this year with the new rental housing program. More higher density residential downtown and neighborhoods adjacent to downtown, invest in neighborhood infrastructure, advertise home repair and maintenance programs for all ages and income groups, especially being sensitive to the needs of the elderly and low-income homeowners and targeting transitional neighborhoods. Pursue development of new residential subdivisions, and then develop quality infill standards that permit developments of different forms and densities to coexist in existing neighborhoods, and then actively pursue infill projects that meet the standards, diversify the city's housing stock, and maximize the use of existing infrastructure investments. That's a pretty key one for me there when I'm looking at this. I didn't include all of them. You can see every single thing that's under those goals on your handouts there. But this is also on our website, so anybody wants to read 200, 300 pages of comprehensive plan, you can certainly go on and do that. The other goal was creating quality places. This pertained more, I think, to the commercial standards that we implemented after this comp plan went in. So we didn't have landscaping standards. We didn't have building material standards and design standards and things like this. So what's in our zoning code now really came out of some of these goals in the comp plan. But we did have some standards. We did have some goals about developing, implementing zoning and subdivision regulations that permit a variety of residential development, such as zero lot line, single family attached, clusters, et cetera. And then encouraging traditional neighborhood development, which integrates housing, shops, workplaces, schools, parks, and other activities within easy walking distance. So I kind of picked out the goals there that I felt pertain to what we're talking about today, but I did include the rest of it there so you can see what else is there. And then the final three criteria, whether adequate public facilities and services are available. Yes. Whether there's an adequate supply of land available in the subject area, that really is looking more towards a rezoning. So I thought that was kind of didn't really apply to what we're talking about today, but maybe somebody could argue that it does. But that criteria is whether there's an adequate supply of land available in the subject area and the surrounding community to accommodate the zoning and community needs. Maybe one way you could take this is say, look, there's really not a lot of housing available right now, and that's why we need this. Whether there's a need in the community for the proposal and whether there will be benefits derived by the community or the area by the proposed rezoning. Yes, there's a demand for more housing and different housing types. So I'll conclude my presentation here to say the staff recommend Plan Commission, recommend approval of the proposed ADU text amendments and forward them to the City Council. If you choose to do that, we would ask that the Plan Commission include staff's memo and the response to these review criteria as the findings of fact. And that'll conclude my presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mathias. So just sort of procedurally here. So if anyone from the public wants to comment, we'll swear everyone in as a group. And then Mr. Mathias has said he'll be happy to answer questions from those who have comments. And so I think what we can do, just kind of, in order, is we can have the public make their comments, and then we can engage in some, let folks answer their or ask their questions, and staff can answer. So if anyone, if anyone intends to testify, speak, you make the comment, I'd ask that you please stand and raise your right hand to be sworn in. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're going to give will be the truth? If so, please affirm by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, please, you can be seated. Please make sure that you've signed in, and
Did everybody sign in?
did anybody else? Yeah, and then I think I'm not sure how quick you grab the sheets, Samantha. They just make sure that everybody gets the chance. And we won't be overly formalistic here. If somebody didn't sign in and as long as you're sworn in, we can add your name to the list. And we can start. So just again, kind of procedural here. We don't have a formal time limit on comments. But I do want to kind of keep things moving because I think there's a lot to discuss. And so I will try and keep an eye on the time. And if you have a comment that is similar to something somebody else has said, if you can just please state that and just, and you'll give your name when you approach the lectern. But I will try and ask that everybody just keep their comments relevant to the topic of accessory dwelling units. And we'll just try to not be overly repetitive, but certainly really want to hear from everybody. I do want to acknowledge that we've got 3 city council members here with us today. I think I saw 3, Debbie Murphy, Alderman Macias, and Alderman Timian are here with us this afternoon, and Mr. Mathias explained. Thank you. So Plan Commission is making a recommendation today. Again, this was brought to Plan Commission by City Council in December. You'll recall that in 2022 there was also a discussion about accessory dwelling units. And that, there was an ordinance that was brought forward. It did not pass at that point. And so city council has asked planning commission to take another look at accessory dwelling units. As Mr. Mathias said, the draft that's in the packet was brought forward by council with the assistance of corporate counsel. And then plan commission has been giving feedback based on what was brought to plan commission earlier this year. So plan commission is the recommending body. City council is the final decision maker on the ordinance changes. So with that, just by kind of way of level setting, I do have a couple of emails that were submitted, and I can start by reading those. So there are 4 emails in support of ADUs. One is from Scott Tunnicliffe, who I know personally and know to be a resident of the city of Bettendorf. Moline could be a real leader in addressing the crisis in a way that steers us away from unsustainable urban sprawl. I support ADUs and wish my community would embrace the concept. Mr. Tunnicliffe lives in Bettendorf. Bettendorf has an ADU ordinance, but it requires that an accessory dwelling unit be within the principal dwelling, and that there can be only one entrance, that they do not allow 2 exterior entrances. This is from Dennis Platt in Davenport, Iowa. I wanted to drop you a short note expressing my support for Moline's auxiliary dwelling unit proposal. I am a member of the Quad Cities Housing Community. It is my understanding that ADUs are quite common and an important policy tool around the nation for communities to begin offering more options to those who may be struggling with housing quality and cost issues. ADUs are been part of housing policy in Davenport, Iowa, and they seem like a trend that typically is adopted slowly while gradually becoming more accepted, useful, and desirable over time. I wish you and Moline success as you update housing policies to better meet the needs of your community. And that, again, is Davenport, Iowa, which does have an accessory dwelling unit ordinance. This is from Haley Trammell, qccommunityfoundations.org. Hi, Savannah. I am a member of the housing community and am writing to express my support for Moline's proposed accessory dwelling units ordinance. This is an excellent and low impact way to add more affordable housing in our community. Haley Trammell is a grant making specialist for Quad Cities Community Foundation. And then finally, from Kelly Thompson, also from Quad Cities Community Foundation. As someone who has worked to provide affordable housing in my professional and personal life for nearly 20 years, I support Moline's proposed accessory dwelling units ordinance. This is an excellent and low impact way to add more affordable housing in our community. I appreciate Moline's progressive approach to this matter. It will serve the city and its residents well. Thank you so much. So are those all the emails that were received in support?
Yes.
And then we have one email that was received with comments on the proposed ordinance from Daniel Misner. And do we know is Mr. Misner? Do we know is
He's
a
a-
Rose Moline resident?
He's on our historic preservation.
Historic preservation, okay. If you can please relay this to the plan commission, I do have a couple of concerns for the ordinance. After reading it over, I have an issue with the lot size minimum requirement of 6,500 square feet. Since I didn't see anything in the ordinance covering the amount of the lot to remain open as yard space, I believe 7,500 square foot lot should be the minimum. My justification would be the size of the existing structure. For instance, I own 2 properties with wildly different yard sizes, but with the same lot size of 50 by 130 feet. One has 966 square feet of coverage with a house and attached garage, while the other covers 1,344 square feet with the house and detached garage. I believe that this is just too small to add an ADU on and still have parking available, since the garage would be lost in order to provide space for the ADU. I also believe that there needs to be a provision in this ordinance that limits the percent of lot coverage that buildings can occupy. Thanks. Dan Misner. I'm sorry, Meisner?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know. Thank you. Okay. Are there any other?
No.
Emails? Okay, very good. And then we've got folks who are, I think most folks have indicated kind of for or against ADUs. So why don't we start with the for ADUs, because I think It looks like those who want to speak for are, I think there's a slightly higher number of those who want to speak for. So can we start with those who want to speak for ADUs and start with, just going down the list, Alderman Timian, please.
Thank you, Commissioner. My name is Matt Timian. I am the alderman in Moline's 4th Ward. I would like to start by just thanking you all for taking the time to consider this. It's been a lot of good discussion, a lot of good debate. I know there've been feelings on all sides of this, and that's kind of the point of this body, is to have those hard discussions. So I want to thank you in advance. Moline is a very unique and diverse place, and this isn't just the people. It also extends to the characteristics of our neighborhoods. We have a lot of different housing styles and that people have chosen to live in over the years. And just a few examples that I can call out. We have small homes near the river that were historically reserved for factory workers. We have a number of small settlements that were for arsenal workers. We have homes close to each other, not far from where I live, up a steep hill that were not at all designed for cars. They were very much a horse and buggy mentality. We have large mansions on the hill that indicate the prosperity and wealth of the earlier days of Moline. We have suburban lots on the south side with a lot of room to spare and very spread out. The point is that we're not a monoculture, not in our people and not in our housing options. And the housing in our city tells us a story. It tells the story of where Moline was over the years, different eras and different decades, different kinds of people. And we welcome all of them because Moline and its housing, it's a tapestry of who we are. And we accept everyone that lives here as part of this. Inside each and every single one of these kinds of homes, maybe, actually, no, I'm going to include all of them. You're going to find ADUs that already exist. You're going to find a garage that was converted in the 50s into a small home. You will find a widow who rents out her second floor to make ends meet. A young couple living in a converted basement to help save for their first home. A carriage house at the Deer Wyman home that was originally a place for servants to live above it. There are multiple lots within my ward and a number of others that have multiple homes on one lot. ADUs already exist in our community. They're part of our unique fabric, and whether we like it or not, they're already here. When I proposed this initial draft ordinance, I did it to finally update our code to reflect what Moline is, not what people 25 years ago thought Moline should be, because that's what our zoning code currently says. This is what they want us to be. I want us to acknowledge who we are. And we need to legitimize the varied housing types that we have and open the door for our rental inspectors to get in there, make sure that everyone's safe, make sure that they're not being taken advantage of, and that we can have better standards going forward to make this thing kind of happen. I ask you today for your vote in the affirmative so that our city can recognize the existing character of our great city and continue onward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'm going to apologize for any mispronunciations. Jeff Manis. Please.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Please state your name and you're down as in favor of.
Most certainly. And hello, distinguished members of the City of Moline's Planning Commission. For the record, my name is Jeff Manis, proudly from 2315 13th Street, Moline. Today, I stand before you respectfully to provide my own personal perspectives and opinions on concepts that not only promise to address the pressing housing challenges we face in Moline, but to also a concept that offers a multitude of benefits to individuals, families, and our community. To that point, in a community like Moline, where housing affordability and availability are increasingly becoming a critical issue, ADUs are proven to be creative housing solutions for those that are financially challenged. These secondary units offer a unique solution to the housing crisis by providing additional living space on existing properties. First and foremost, ADUs offer flexibility and adaptability. They provide homeowners with an opportunity to maximize their use of property, whether it's accommodating aging parents, providing housing for adult children, or generating rental income. This flexibility not only enhances the value of the property, but also fosters multi-generational living arrangements, promoting stronger family ties and support networks. ADUs promotes sustainability and urban development by utilizing infrastructure and land. They minimize the need for new construction, thereby reducing the environmental impact or impacts and preserving green spaces. Additionally, ADUs encourage denser, more walkable neighborhoods and promote community cohesion by reducing the reliance on automobiles. ADUs contribute to the economic resilience for Moline homeowners. They will offer a source of supplemental income through rental opportunities, helping to alleviate the financial burdens and improve economic stability. For tenants, ADUs provide affordable housing options in desirable neighborhoods, allowing them to live closer to work, schools, and other amenities throughout Moline. But most importantly, in my opinion, ADUs foster an inclusivity and diversity within communities. By increasing these housing options and accommodations, a wider range of household sizes and income levels, they promote socioeconomic diversity and combat exclusionary zoning practices. This diversity enriches the fabrics of our neighborhoods, fosters a sense of belonging and inclusiveness to all residents. The benefits of auxiliary dwelling units extend far beyond the mere additional living space. They represent a holistic solution to challenges of housing and affordability, environmental sustainability, economic sustainability, and social equity. By embracing ADUs, we can create a more resilient, vibrant, and inclusive communities for generations to come. And it is for those reasons, as a sixth-generation Moline resident that is raising a seventh, and potentially caring for a fifth generation, I humbly ask the members of Moline's Planning Commission to please consider approving the allowance of accessory dwelling units in R2 zoning district. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, I do wish I could stick around and hear all of the other compelling statements from the public, but I do have to run out. I have to head to Moline High School's auxiliary dwelling unit. That is the historic Wharton Fieldhouse to help out the basketball community in the city of Moline. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, you too. Thank you. Hey, Christy Covendale? So please just state your name, please.
Christy Coverdale.
Thank you.
I don't have a long, very nice, like you've heard already. I'm going to share just a few notes on my own personal story of how I am interested in these ADUs. Not too long ago, my son, who has a lot size that I think would fit what you were talking about, we were brainstorming that we could do something where I could live with him. Two things. I would be close to help with childcare, of which I am now doing from afar. And then in a number of years, I would be close so they could help me as I age in place. And I don't think I need to go into all of the issues of how expensive childcare is and child help, and then all of the issues with aging and the expense of needing assistance as you age out. Well, as we were really excited about doing that, we became aware that we can't even consider it in Moline. I said, well, that's not true, because I have been in many, many places in Moline as a lifelong resident that have things that would fit this ADU statement. How can that be? We can't build one? Well, sure, we can build one. I suppose if we want to go under the radar somehow, that's not the kind of people that we are. And here I am speaking, and that's it.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, thank you. Michael and Rose, and I'm sorry, Winter? Okay, please state your name.
My name is Michael Miniature. I've been a resident here. I wasn't born here, but I've been here for the past 30 years or so. And I'd like to speak in favor of ADUs. I think that there have been some concerns that they decrease the value of houses around them. They certainly, I think, in most places that they've built them, increase the value of the property the ADU is on. And generally, I found in Moline that when a house beside you sells for 100,000, the house that was previously 50,000 beside it comes up to 60,000. So it raises the value of the houses around it. I'm mostly retired at this time, and you know we've got a larger house, and we've been looking to maybe downsize. And we've been looking in Iowa because in 2022 the ordinance did not pass here. We have a garage that maybe will pass, and it needs to be inspected, of course, that we could convert to an ADU. And, you know, as we get older, the balance isn't as good, and you don't want to fall down the stairs, or even sometimes it's difficult to climb stairs. And if you fall, you break your hip. So it's better to be in a level structure like an ADU that we had planned. But since we couldn't have it, we've been lucky in Iowa, we're holding off because of, you know, interest rates and so forth, and the cost of everything has gone up. So I think for Moline to introduce something like this would be very good for us and for numerous other people in the same building. On top of that, you know, they're not cheap to convert. From what I gather, ADUs will cost anywhere from 70 to 200,000. If you really want a luxury one, you can go even higher. So not everybody's going to go rush out and convert their garage into an ADU. So I think that, you know, with the restrictions that you placed, like most places have off-street parking, and you have enough no Airbnbs there, that there won't be that number of these structures being built. But for those that want it, I think it's good. I've lived up on 7th Avenue here in Moline for 30 years. I know my neighbors. I really don't want to leave. And an ADU would certainly allow us to stay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Tim Minor.
Tim Minor. I'm speaking in favor of the ADUs for a few reasons. This is near and dear to me. I'm a real estate agent here in Illinois and Iowa. I represent a lot of first-time home buyers who are finding themselves priced out of buying houses. I'm going to give you a few examples real quick. In the Wheelock-Veely neighborhood, 19th and 15th, a house recently went on the market for $124,000. It had multiple offers. In 2021, the house sold for $100,000. And Crestwood Hills, which is where I live, 16 offers on a house that was come on the market at $215,000 and sold for $259,000. Near Franklin on 51st and 11th Avenue C, a house was offered at $134,000. We wrote an offer on the house for $15,000 over ask and were turned away. I'm told that house sold for somewhere over $30,000 over ask. We have a true crisis on our hands. And if you are not part of the solution, you're part of the problem, because we have to figure this out for future generations. Why it's also personal to me is because my daughter recently moved back in with me. I have a house in Crestwood with 4 bedrooms. She was in a situation where work wasn't paying her enough. She couldn't afford where she was living. And I don't know, I've got 5 children, and I don't know what's going to happen in the next 10, 15 years. And I feel it's a duty as a real estate agent to address this problem and address it seriously. I don't think that ADUs are the only answer. It's just a small portion of this thing. And we have to come up with a solution together. You know, in early 1980s, my grandmother owned a house. It was up near Uptown. She lived at 18th Avenue and 15th Street. This is my great grandmother. It was on the corner across from a church. I can remember going to that house and going upstairs, and there was a kitchen up there. There was a living room up there, and there was a bedroom up there with a bathroom. And I asked my grandmother, I said, what's going on here? You know, even as a youngster, I knew something was different. My great-great-grandmother lived in that house for the last 3 or 4 years of her life, and my great-grandmother took care of her. I don't understand how something that has been going on since the eighties, at least that I know of, is not allowed today. And I know that, you know, there's a lot of people here, they're gonna think housing prices, this and that. Listen, it's a big issue. It's a big issue. I talked to a lot of top producers in this real estate market. Some big names that you would recognize and know, you know, I'm not gonna name drop, but they were all surprised that we didn't have this ordinance already passed in Moline, because they've all been in these houses that have been single family houses that were converted to duplexes, or duplexes that were converted back to single family houses. They exist. You see them every day when you're there. And, you know, I know it's tough, but I think we need to do something. So I'm in favor of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Next, Dick Potter, and I'm sorry, there's this. Okay, all right, I'll skip you and come back to you. Judy Drake. I'm sorry, also against. I'm sorry, Rochelle Carlin? No, you don't, okay, got it. Okay, sorry, I'm not reading my sheet right. Christine, no. Paula Namp, you're planning to speak?
Yes.
But against?
Against.
Sorry. Alderman Macias?
Good afternoon, Alvaro Macias, second ward alderman, and excuse me for not dressing up. I was doing some undercover work for advocating for consumers targeting predatory lenders, because they're here in Moline and just about everywhere. So I do want to speak in particular to this topic. A house is really a process, and this is something a old realtor friend told me years ago. And just like our lives change, you know, from living in your parents' basement, maybe the attic, getting your apartment, getting some roommates, right? All of us have had those life stages to finding your forever home, and then eventually going to a retirement home. It's a process. And so myself, as I advocate for consumers, I look at this as another option for consumers, for Moliners. People should have a way of having their homes and properties adjust to their life. I believe in consumer rights. I believe in consumer choice. And when we start dictating to people what they can and can't do with their properties that they work so hard for, that's where I kind of, you know, get a little defensive, right? People work hard to pay their mortgages, and this is something that I feel once we start, you know, trying to dictate on people's rights pertaining to being a consumer, we as elected officials have to step in and advocate for them. So I do remember when I was shopping for 7 years ago, we were home shopping. We did run into a home that had a mother-in-law's quarter. That's how it was listed. And we thought it'd be a cool idea. Unfortunately, it didn't have a great yard, and we have kids. But looking back at it now, we thought we have a kid in college. And we think back, man, that could have been a great place for her because as it is, she's almost like a roommate now. Again, life processes, right? And so they're out there. They're already out there. They're not regulated. I cringed when a friend of mine, a coworker, was showing me all these updates she did for her mother, who is now a widow, to move back in the basement. Spend a lot of money, look great. And I realized that wouldn't conform to this. And just like the comment was made, choosing to do it under the radar, she really didn't know any different, but I didn't say anything. I just thought, well, don't show it to me again. So that said, you know, I'm all for this. Really opposition to this is counter to regulating the housing so that it's safe. And it also adds another element of affordable housing and again, consumer choice. And the difference between now and in 2022 is that we now have the rental housing inspection program in place, and that really needed to be put together first. So it's a great time to pass this, and I think we just need to get on board with the rest of the communities that are really making things happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Alexandria Alliance. Oops. Thanks.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the commission, Alexandra Elias. I work for Renew Moline. I also own property at 1410 16th Street in Moline and 1520 12th Avenue in Moline. And I'm here to encourage your support for one tool that's in the toolbox to expand housing options in this community. Really critical issue. Moline is landlocked, as you know, on three sides by two cities and a river, and has very limited potential to grow. My assessment of the ordinance as written is that 6,500 square feet lot limit and just the construction costs alone will really limit what you see in terms of people rushing to the building counter. I just don't think it's going to happen. In my line of work, I see construction costs estimating generally from $150 a square foot to 250 square foot. Even if you halved that, because, you know, a homeowner could sort of be a little more creative in how they fund a project, even at $100 a square foot. I mean, a 500 square foot dwelling unit is going to be $50,000. The difficulty of financing that, I think, is significant in any case. So I guess I wouldn't rush to judgment that there's going to be a whole influx of these, but I do think it's such an important option for people that are aging in place, that need creative solutions for kids moving home, and so many other things. My personal experience with ADUs is a property that I bought in 1998. I was an entry-level planner about 2 years out of graduate school, and I bought a 2-on-1 property, as it was called. It had about an 800 square foot 2-bedroom house with what this ordinance calls a coach house in the back. And the income from that studio unit on top of the garage provided the extra income I needed to qualify to buy that house. I would not have qualified otherwise. That enabled me to then buy the house next door, which was a 2-on-1, and the house next door to that. And because of that, the benefit of that home ownership early in my life and my career has given me financial stability that just simply would not have been possible, and really paved the way for a lot of things for me. I now own multiple units, including the 2 properties in Moline that I mentioned. And my experience is when a landlord lives on the property, bad tenants are less likely to want to live there. One of the other things that I see that I'm very troubled by in the affordable, in the quest for young people to be able to afford a home and stay in this community, is that we have that syndrome of property management companies paying cash for single family homes. And I think mom and pop landlords who are just, you know, getting a unit here and a unit there really are the key to well-managed properties. I think they're more likely to take care of them because it's their future. I can tell you that the property that I still own from 1998 will probably be my retirement home, and that income will very likely help me pay for my retirement. I urge your consideration to recommend approval of this ordinance to council. Creating new paths to housing and home ownership is an important public policy goal and a key to Moline's ability to attract and retain talent. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'm sorry, there's one here that I am not able to read. Is it Susan? Susanna? Aguilar? Yes, and did you want to speak in favor? Okay, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So let me introduce myself. My name is Susanna Aguilar, and I am co-chair of the Floricienta Association. I am also a mom and daughter before anything. So I speak to you in this moment to give my opinion. So being a mom and a daughter before anything, I am in the milestone in life where a couple years from now, my elderly mom may take a turn. One slip, one fall. It's that simple. What are the choices do I have as the key holder in my family? If I choose to build on my property, build that coach house, as it says, or that mother-in-law quarters, whether I have a detached garage or not detached garage, whether I have a he shed or she shed in the back. These are all choices and things that I work hard for to add comfort to my family. And just on the aspect of my mother, again, she's within a couple years of where she may not be able to live independently. She is strong as ever, but she already told me she's not going to a home. She has. And I will want to respect her wishes as much as I can. And if I have the assets and values to do that, I would like to do that. So that's one reason why I go in favor for this ruling. Another reason is within these couple of years, I'll have a college student, and whether she chooses that she wants to stay at home or move out of home, again, I want to be able to provide the resources and the steps for her to have that transition. She can live in the backyard. That's fine. Have that accessory dwelling, have her own privacy, that milestone, that stepstone as she gets through college or maybe coming back from college. Either way, as Alvaro Mencias had mentioned, that we have to grow with our time in life as either as adults or for our children or for our parents. Putting on my other hat of co-chair of the Floricente. Floricente neighborhood is one of the eldest neighborhoods here in Moline. And this accessory dwelling, coach house dwelling is already very much vibrant in our neighborhood. I've seen plenty of my neighbors and families throughout these generations utilize those dwellings and homes. These are people that are hardworking family that have values. Their children go to our school. They go to work here in Moline. They add as an asset to our community in more than one way. And I believe in generational living, and a lot of my neighbors do too. So when I think about this ordinance being passed, I am all in favor for it because it's already best practices that have shown throughout the years and decades already. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Perez.
I'm probably the last one that's in favor, so before the negatives come up, you're probably gonna hear them say, the parking, my housing is gonna go down. It's gonna be me. It's not what's best for the community, what's best for Moline. ADUs, you know, in places where real estate is highly expensive, Arizona, California, these ADUs provide mechanisms. We've heard of senior citizens where we can build these units and we can take care of our elderly. And if you look at the statistics, they're very huge with Hispanics and Asian population, both of which are growing increasingly in the Quad Cities. And we're looking at what 6,500 lots size. I mean, we didn't bring the map up, but I'm not sure how many properties that is. And at we've heard in excess of $50,000 to $60,000. These aren't just everybody's going to go out and do this. These are planned decisions. A loan against my house for $60,000. What do I want to do with this? You know, do I want to provide a safe place for my mother, for my daughter, for my son? You know, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right. So I'm just looking at the notes here. So, okay, so going back, so next up for the force, Diane Moore. I'm sorry. For, against, sorry. It's actually a mark, I'm gonna mark, okay, against, sorry. For the record.
Diane Moore, and I would like to say that the lady who left, the elderly lady who left, I should be careful because I'm that elderly lady also. But anyway, she was, had to leave and she wanted to convey to you that she feels enforcement of this is extremely important. If you're going to do it, she says from down next door to her is like 7 people living in a 1-bedroom house. And she said in the other direction, down farther, there is again a lot of people in a very small home, and it's not supposed to be like that. So she wants to make sure that you have enforcement. Also, I would like to wonder, I know you read all the 4s that came in, but these are people who don't live within the city.
That's correct.
And that kind of bothers me as an individual because we are the citizens of Moline and we're here talking, and that is good. But I guess it just really bothers me when somebody out is trying to influence your thoughts. My first question is, why are we bringing it back? People spoke and it's like, okay, we're bringing it back again. If it was to be brought and dropped again, are you going to try the third time? You're going to keep going until eventually people wear out or we all pass away, one or the other. Number two, I am concerned about parking, and especially when it comes to snow removal and ambulances and the fire department, because I can tell you a few avenues in Moline where you have to start at one end and you have to wait for somebody to come to the other before you can go because it's that bad. Also, I'm very concerned about no special use and having the neighbors know. I think it's kind of blindsiding the people if all of a sudden the construction people come and they're finding out that they're going to have additional neighbors. Also, I have a question about the size of a lot. You say 6,500 square feet or larger. If half of that lot or a third of that lot is in a ravine, then that still is the lot size. And so that building could then be pushed in even closer in the existing framework, correct?
So that's correct, that a ravine would count towards the minimum lot size.
Yeah, and that I think is a problem that you need to look at. And I would also like to know how you people would feel if all of a sudden you had somebody building something next to you, or or when you want to go buy a piece of property, do you want to buy when you know you're going to have extra neighbors next to you? Also, this property that you have, this ADU, can also be rented out for 2 to 3 months. So you could have people coming and going. It's not a case of just has to have a lease. It could be people coming and going. I know that we are in a situation of where we need additional housing. I don't see any creativity going as far as looking at expanding on the other side of the river. I think that that is something that the city has always talked about and talks about and talks about. And instead of doing it, all they end up doing is trying to drop more units into smaller spaces. And that's part of the reason why I'm opposed to it. Everybody is talking about this as an investment. Yes, yes, it's an investment. You can have income to help you pay for your property, but you're also going to increase the value of your property. And that also means your taxes are going to be going up. So that's what I had to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Barbara Sandberg.
Barbara Sandberg, and I'm a member of the Historic Preservation Commission. Thank you for listening to us today. I wish to express my disapproval for the proposed accessory dwelling unit ordinance. I live in a house in the first ward on 26th Avenue. It was built in 1928. The second house to be built in what was then a new neighborhood in a former farm property. As the neighborhood developed, all the houses were set back from the street in a similar distance, as were the garages to the rear of the property, set back to allow city alleys. This pattern of neighborhood development would continue throughout the city until the 1950s, when houses were built with attached garages, eliminating the need for our alleys. But these homes too were laid out with similar setbacks from the street to the avenue. This pattern was done to achieve equal visibility and access to individual properties and was aesthetically pleasing to the general layout of the neighborhood. The city has a number of ordinances that protect property owners located in R2 single-family neighborhoods. The addition of fences is regulated as to placement and height, as is the site of placement of yard sheds. The mowing of grass and shoveling of snow is mandated. The disposal of trash and the regulations that restrict the running of businesses from a home or a garage is also been in place for many years and has kept a neighborhood where the families can live comfortably and knowing that their property is protected thusly. The city has a neighborhood improvement officer that responds to complaints on these and any other issues that might come up, because these are single-family R2 neighborhoods, and these are the background of our city. The introduction of the accessory dwellings to these established neighborhoods opens up the potential for a major change to the aesthetics and the livability of these neighborhoods. If this ADU ordinance is passed, my neighbor could decide to construct an additional building within feet of my property, infringing on my sight line and privacy of my backyard and to the others that are in the block. The rental of these structures brings in additional people to an already compact location, along with additional cars that need parking spaces either on the property or on the street or avenue. My question is, why would Moline choose to disrupt established neighborhoods with structures that will occupy what was intended to be open space in our backyards? If an ADU is built next to my property or yours, what will that do to the value of my property? In reverse, what would I look at if I were looking for a property and it sat next to an already built ADU and the style maybe was the same as the house to try to make it blend in? Would I even look at that property? I don't think so. Another question is, why is this ADU ordinance being discussed again when it was soundly voted down less than 2 years ago? How many phone calls or emails has the mayor, the city administrator, or alderman received asking that it be reintroduced? What prompted all this additional attention? How many petitions have been filed seeking support for the ordinance? I personally am not aware of any strong support for this issue. I've not heard a soul. Most of my friends have all said, well, why would we do this? This is not something they're feeling is an addition to their property value. How many of the public meetings have been held this time to get feedback from property owners after explaining how this ordinance will permanently alter the makeup of their neighborhood? Their voices need to be heard. The arguments, we are told, is it's a housing shortage, disrupting our established neighborhoods, some of them dating back to nearly 100 years, as is mine, is not the answer to the problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Frank, I'm sorry, Edge?
Eggy.
Eggy, thank you.
Frank Eggy. I unfortunately don't have a prepared eloquent speech that some of our aldermen and city employees have come up with to push this. But in listening to it and looking at the ordinance, I think of my neighborhood up around Logan School. We have one person neighborhood. I don't want to see more rental properties come in because they're poorly maintained. We have one house that's about 3 doors down from me. A gentleman bought the house. It was affordable at the time. Put up a large garage in the back, 3 cars, takes up most of the lot. Could be made in one of these auxiliary homes, but he doesn't rent the home out. Last year, it finally got repainted after several years of the neighbors complaining, finally going to the city, had broken windows in it. Right now, a gutter's come loose and is hanging off to the side. That would be one example of a rental property. He has 2 other ones in the neighborhood that he just uses a garage to store his collector cars in. So those are really not doing the city any good or any of the citizens as affordable housing. We have another neighbor next door to us who is a fantastic neighbor. He and his children are terrific. And I'm not meaning to complain about them at all because they are great. I like having them as neighbors. But they have a number of children. They have a large number of cars. They just recently picked up a pickup truck to go with what they've already got. It causes some contention, some hard feelings with people who the cars are parked in front of their properties and they can't use the sidewalks. Friends come to visit. The friends have to walk quite some distance to be able to get to the home they're wanting to visit. The neighbors are great. They shuffle the cars around. If they don't, then somebody will get a tow sticker put on one of their cars. So that's an example of if you have a auxiliary home, what can happen if you have more cars, you have no parking. So, it would just be an example. They could take and convert the 3-car garage that they put up that takes up most of their yard now. They could convert that into an affordable home or into something their children could move into. But that would mean if they're married, maybe have another automobile to have sitting out front in the neighborhood. It could also mean that if the children live there long enough, they would have children who would have more vehicles, taking up more space on the street. And then if I look at my house and I have some grandchildren who just purchase their own homes, affordable homes for them, young people just starting out. They bought houses, they're fixing them up, and they'll have some great places to live in before long. But I look at my home, if I were to have grandparents that I wanted to house in a auxiliary home like that, okay, they pass away at some point. I couldn't rent it, or if I wanted to move, maybe right now my house would be worth a couple of $100,000. That's an affordable home that would sell in a matter of days. But if I added an auxiliary home to the lot, take up a lot of the lot. Now, what would be the sale price of that home? Would it be $350,000? Is that an affordable home? So what's it going to do to actually having affordable homes? I have probably around my area or nearby, I probably have 5, 6 neighbors who have lots that would be big enough to do that. But it would make the neighborhood not very good, not very appealing anymore if they all did that. So there's some things to think about. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Dick Potter.
Thank you, Dick Potter. I live at 1136 25th Street. First of all, as a former alderman, I want to thank you for your service. Often relied on recommendations from the Planning Commission, and I appreciate all your efforts. My concern is, I guess I'm sort of torn on this. I listened to some of the people on 4, and they were talking about how things already exist. And we're going to, deal with that because they're already here. And my biggest concern is enforcement. I was around when the last comp plan was passed. I was intimately involved in working with the Planning Commission on all those things. And one of the things that we worked on was when we created the R2 district was to prevent single-family homes from being converted to duplexes or triplexes. And we have considerable problems with rental property. I am beyond enthralled that the city council has passed the rental housing inspection ordinance. And I guess my concern becomes, I would feel much more inclined to be supportive of this if I could feel as though the rental housing inspection program was up and running and well, and that we could deal with that issue. Like I said, I'm not as concerned about parking. I'm not as concerned about some of the other issues that folks are talking about. Well, my concern is simply the fact about enforcement. I know you talked about restrictive covenants. Who is going to follow up on that when the property gets sold? We have a long history of not dealing with rental housing problems. Just some things to think about. I'm not necessarily opposed to this in a philosophical level, but I think there are some issues that we need to be concerned about. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Judy Drake. I'm wondering if is that the woman who left, do we think? Okay. Okay, so Judy Drake indicated a question about whether she would speak and indicated that she was against. Paula Nab. I think Paula Nab stepped out. Okay. And I think that is everyone. Is there anyone who was wishing to speak who has not had an opportunity to do so? Okay, very good. So then I think we can kind of open it up for further discussion among the Plan Commission and staff. So Alderman,
No.
or sorry, Beth, Commissioner Moyer, only have it by heart.
Thank you. Old habits. So I just wanted to just real quickly address why this got brought back. And since I was on council at the time and I did vote against it. And the reason that and it would have passed, we could have passed it and we wanted to pass it at that time. And I will tell you the reason it got brought back. It was a bad ordinance. It wasn't it. We had amended it a few times and it just needed to come back and get redone. It wasn't a matter of it was soundly defeated or any of that. It was just it wasn't written really well. And to that end, I just want to thank this body, but very specifically, we have new staff. We have competent staff at this time who's really put the energy into getting this thing right. We've addressed the enforcement issues. We've addressed a lot of the issues that were problems in the ordinance. So this was more or less just getting it right. And that's the reason that it's come back this time.
I'll piggyback off of Commissioner Moyer, not Alderman.
Yeah.
So I was here for the last public hearing in December of 2022, and I was a no vote. Philosophically, like Mr. Potter, I think it's a great policy. However, as a newcomer to the city, I had just moved here about 6 months prior. I too had concerns about the rental industry here on both sides of the river, and so my loudest objection was that if we want to introduce more rental units to our city, we ought to be able to make sure we have quality places to live. You know, we see what happened across the river when inspections are ignored and such. And so that was my big concern. I too thank the staff. I think you guys have done an incredible job over the last year plus, really fixing out some of the wrinkles in there. And so I've got some other comments, but I'll save them.
No, you can carry on.
Couple of thoughts here. There was some idea that we could open up some neighborhoods south of the Rock River. And so I want to touch on that. And there's a really incredible book out there. I encourage everyone to look for it. It's called Strong Towns. And what it touches on is the way that we've developed our communities largely since World War II has been a combination of things, but a big part of it has been using tax increment financing to build out neighborhoods, build out commercial spaces. And what happens is those deals run for about 30 years. At the end of 30 years, as a developer, you have a choice. Do I put money back into an aging area, an aging place, or do I go seek out a new tax-friendly deal from a community? And so what happens is you start spreading out that city over and over and over and over again, and it stretches out the cost to maintain that city, the infrastructure. I was at a city council meeting last year that they talked about the cost to maintain our roads here is going to be about $7 million this year. That's taxpayer money. We have 275 miles of centerline road in the city here. And if we were to increase and continually to expand out and search for those new open spaces, that number is only going to grow higher and higher and higher. And that is not sustainable long term. And so I think there is opportunity south of the Rock River. But we've got to be conscious of what that means for more police, more sewer, more snowplow, more staff to maintain all of that stuff. And so it's not as simple of just opening up and going. Beyond that, cities that have been successful in this, they've encouraged it. They haven't just opened it up. There's a community in the state of New York that has allowed for forgivable loans to build ADUs for their residents. I'm not saying that that's something that we should do here, but rather than just open it up and say, hey, it's there, take it if you want it, maybe lean into it. It encourages people that are outside of our community to come in and perhaps think of, hey, this could be a place where I can build a family. I can bring my family, something of that nature. And so for that, I would say I'm in favor of this. Last but not least, we talked about loans and how do you find a loan for these? Well, October 2023, the Federal Housing Administration approved or updated their policy to allow you to obtain a bank loan to build one of these. So if you're a prospective home buyer and you want to purchase a home and build an ADU, whether that's ground up construction, new unit with an ADU, you can use anywhere from 50 to 75% of that rental income as an approval mechanism for that loan. And so again, we talk about affordability. This allows for new people into our community. And so again, for that reason, I'm in favor of this. Thank you.
Hi, I just want to make a few comments. I believe you mentioned about being influenced by others from not in this community that emailed, and what I'm influenced by is our own people that live here. I live here. I have an interest in Moline. I came from Bettendorf, met my husband. I've been here 30 years. Moline's my home. So my interest is in all of you and this board that have really gone back and forth on this. Not all in favor, but we've talked it through. So it's not been a light decision by anyone. It hasn't. My other thing is, you mentioned that, you have the lady that left, she has neighbors that have 7 people in the home. The only thing I can tell you is now when you do this, you have to register. So you're on the books. I mean, we've really tried. We tried with the inspection aspect of it and the rental inspection aspect of it. We've tried to really touch on a lot of these concerns. None of this was done lightheartedly by any means. I thank you for your comments. You have great comments and made really good points. There are eyesores everywhere in this city. My husband and I have pride in our home, pride in our land. We have a neighbor next door that has a dilapidated several things, trees growing up through their deck in the back. It's horrible. And I have gone over there and begged them to let me clean it up. So it's not just about building an AUD. I wish I had an AUD that he built that had to match his house, that looked right, that had to follow the rules. Because what I have now is a dilapidated playground equipment that is horrible, and trees just growing straight up and down that encroach on my property. So it's never going to be perfect. We do the best that we can, but I just think there's been many, many good reasons, and this board really tried to make sure we had everything covered to the best of our ability so that these were built the way they should be and had to follow the rules. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. So I just want to make one point, just as Mr. Mathias said at the outset. So what's in front of us is a draft ordinance. Alderperson Timian made reference to the fact that this current draft was based in part on the work of what was done in 2022. I do want to make a couple of clarifying comments just to make sure that there's understanding of what is different from the 2022 ordinance, to the point about there having been a lot of back and forth. So one difference between the draft that was in front of City Council in 2022 that was first voted down by Plan Commission and then ultimately voted down by City Council, there was a requirement for a special use permit. I have said before, in fact, I spoke to City Council about my concern about the fact that on the 2022 version of this ordinance, there were 2 public meetings and certain representations were made to the participants there about what was in the ordinance. So one of the questions that was asked in that meeting was, will neighbors be notified of neighbors' plan to build an ADU? And the answer at that time was yes, neighbors within 250 feet would be notified of a neighbor's plan to build an ADU. In this draft of the ordinance, there is no requirement for a special use permit. Neighbors will not be notified of the neighbor's intention to build an accessory dwelling unit. Another distinction between the 2022 draft and the current draft, and again, what was described in the public meetings in 2022, is that there would be a requirement of a lease. It started out as a 1-year lease. It was changed at city council to a 6-month lease. That is no longer a provision in this draft. That the requirement is only that there be no short-term rentals, meaning no rentals under 30 days, but rentals could be successive 30-day rentals. And I think someone made reference to it could be several periods of rental, several different renters over a period of time. And in the absence of any kind of lease requirement, that is correct, that the rental ordinance simply allows or prohibits rentals under 30 days and allows rentals of 30 days or more successively. Another comment that was made related to the rental register. If an ADU is rented by a family member, the current rental ordinance does not require rental registration. If the ADU is rented by a family member, as that is defined in the rental ordinance, and it's by blood, it excludes, for example, cousins. And in a previous draft of the ordinance, there was a proposed change to the definition of family. That is no longer in here. Under the current definition of family, you can have up to 3 unrelated people living in any dwelling unit with an ADU. You could have 3 unrelated people in the principal dwelling, up to 3 unrelated people in the ADU, for a total of 6 unrelated people on the lot. And there was a proposal to change that to 5 per dwelling unit. That is not in this current draft, to be clear, but that the change to the definition of family has been removed. The definition of family was in the original draft because the very original proposal was to allow ADUs for family members. And over time, as the ADU draft, the ordinance draft evolved, the change was to allow for rental and not limit occupancy of ADUs to family members. So that definition of family is out. I think Mr. Mathias included in the packet for today's meeting information about major and minor home occupations, and clarified, because this was part of the discussion at the last meeting, a renter in an ADU or an occupant of an ADU can carry out a minor home occupation, as can the occupant of the principal dwelling. And so in a major home occupation is defined in the ordinance would require a special use permit. So you could have a minor occupation in the ADU, you could have a minor occupation in the principal dwelling. So simultaneously, concurrently. Mr. Mathias talked about the coach house, and we did have a conversation ahead of the meeting, Mr. Mathias and I. Currently, as the ordinance is drafted, there's no size limitation on the size of the dwelling space in a coach house, which is different from the limitation on the livable space in the other types of ADUs that are in the ordinance. And I think there's a question about whether that's intentional. I note that the draft ordinance was taken in large part, I think at the direction of council, from an ordinance in Oak Park. One of my observations is that Oak Park has very small lots, and our proposed ordinance refers to kind of the total size of the lot in terms of defining the lot coverage size. And my question to the group is, would there be some benefit to limiting the dwelling space of the coach house, similar to the 1,000 square foot limitation on other types of ADUs? Because that seems to be an anomaly, and it would seem that you could construct potentially on a large enough lot, an extremely large coach house with a lot of livable space. And I don't know if that's really the intention.
Madam Chair, I just clarify a couple things there. So I think number one, staff would be supportive if you want to include the the 1,000 square foot livable space limitation. We'd be supportive of that. Secondly, I know we were kind of talking about this back and forth, but I think in the way we enforce a major accessory structure or a garage would be, the footprint can't be bigger than the house and the height can't be bigger than the house. And so that would still be that way for a coach house garage, but staff, we don't see any reason if you want to include that limitation on the livable space size for a coach house as well.
So, and I'm looking at Alderman Timian, since I think you brought this to council in December. Do you want to make a comment?
Yeah, thank you. There was no intention for that. I would be supportive of limiting the coach house to the size of the footprint building as well, so that you don't have a home overreaching the garage. That's not the intention. So whether it's a square footage requirement or limiting to the being, I think, the overarching limitation for all possible sizes, I see no issue whatsoever with limiting that.
Perhaps the amendment could say something along the lines of the lesser of 1,000 square feet or the footprint of the building not to exceed the footprint of the building. Yeah.
Madam Chair, can I just jump in real quick?
Sorry. Yeah, Mr. Silverman is a corporation counsel.
Yeah, I would encourage the Plan Commission to have its own discussions and make its own recommendation. I realize some of the elected officials are in the room. As much as anything, the elected officials, while we all know they're aldermen, they're there really in their capacity as residents of the city.
Okay.
So it's really kind of not best practice to engage in that type of negotiation with city council that way.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Silverman.
Yep.
Well, I'll direct that to the Plan Commission then. Does that language satisfy?
I'll second it.
Well, I think I'm not sure, are we necessarily needing to vote on, and maybe I should be looking at Mr. Silverman. Do we need to vote on the overall ordinance, but do we need to vote to make changes to what's in front of us? Yeah, go ahead.
If I were to vote to recommend the ordinance as it's written with the update to the coach house being the lesser of 1,000 square feet or the structure of the building, could I make that motion and bring it to vote?
Here's what I would recommend. I mean, you can do it that way. Maybe the better way, because you're still in the midst of your discussion, is to kind of get all of the thoughts in terms of changes and then work through them after you've compiled that list. But you can do it this way too. But it just, for the flow of the conversation, it might be better to just tag what changes you want to make and then take it from there.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
We gotta remember the public hearing, I think, is still open, right?
The public hearing is still open.
You have to close the public hearing, I believe.
Just think about the fact, do we feel like the people who are here from the public have had the opportunity to get their questions asked? I guess is my question.
Well, ask them. Yeah, does anybody still have questions that they'd like? Any, staff is certainly available to answer any questions if you don't feel like it's been answered yet.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There was a mention of this distance between the original building being only 6 feet for an additional building. Did I get that correctly? In other words, my house, where it sits now, I could build something, like an additional accessory building, just 6 feet away from that?
Yes, so that's the question from a member of the audience was if there's a 6-foot separation requirement for buildings now. So what's in our code right now, a principal structure, the house, right? If you want to build a garage in your backyard, a detached garage, one of the requirements is that you have to be at least 6 feet away from that house, from foundation to foundation. So that's just a current policy. I mean, that's a current code that we've had on the books since 2006.
But you take an older neighborhood where we have our backyards, which is what we're trying to protect in some of this instances here, that we value our space.
To be clear, I'm talking about your property. So your house and you want to build a garage in your backyard. So you would come to the city and say, hey, look, I want to build this 3 feet away from my house. And we'd say, no, you have to be at least 6 feet away.
When we added, a number of years ago, back in the 70s, we added the family room to the back of our house. There was a porch there that we took off. The porch certainly was not as big as the family room, but we had to be careful about how much additional space we were taking up and how did it look with the rest of the neighbors. We were even told that we couldn't exceed our space further than any of the neighbors on the block. It's to be in symmetry with this.
Yeah, so there's a number of things we would look at. This is something you're doing in the front yard. There's going to be a 25-foot setback, for example, but there are ways where we can, there's some ways we could tweak that and some automatic variances that kick in where we may look at what, everybody else in this neighborhood is 19 feet away. So therefore you can build a porch and be only 19 feet away. There's setbacks we would look at. We talked about lot coverage. So there's so many things that would influence right now where you can build a garage that are also going to be applicable to an ADU as well. But yeah, that 6-foot separation has always been there since, I shouldn't say always, but it's been there in this zoning code since 2006.
Well, with people with alleys, that wouldn't really, I wouldn't think that would have anything to do with it. That's.
Maybe we can put the map up because I grew up,
Yes, I know.
we grew up neighbors. And I'm almost certain you wouldn't even be able to build an ADU. We're not talking about 6,500 square foot in that neighborhood. You don't have the lot size to build the ADU. So.
She can. Did you say you were on? I didn't know. I said, there is a map. I have not seen the map, but my particular lot happens to be a little bit wider than some of the others on the block.
Can we bring the map up?
It's big.
Yeah.
But I'm just concerned with somebody who's going to build something in our backyards and then ruin it, the aesthetic value of our property.
So just to be clear, I guess, so everybody can hear, one of the questions is where you can build these in the backyard and the spacing. And so to answer all those questions, what's proposed in the ordinance right now for a detached ADU, if somebody in your neighborhood had a 6,500 square foot lot and they were able to do this, they would need to, number one, not exceed the lot coverage of 35%. So whatever that square footage is, they can't take up more than 35% with the house and all their buildings. Yes, all the buildings on their lot. They have to be at least 5 feet away from the side property line. They'll have to be at least 10 feet away from the rear property line. And then it can't be bigger than the house and it can't be taller than the house. So, as well as any other limitation that we talked about today. So I just want to make sure we're answering, getting all the questions answered specifically.
Right. And I want to jump in. If members of the public want to ask questions of the Plan Commission or staff, please come to the lectern so we can pick up your recording.
Thanks, David. So yeah, if you have a question for us.
And I expect at some point I could talk.
Can we were you sworn in?
I did swear in.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you state your name?
My name is Diana Garman. I do live in Moline. I have 2 properties in Moline. I would say at this point that I am against this ordinance change. I haven't heard anything at this meeting, and I appreciate your time. Nothing has changed my mind. I would just be curious, and I wouldn't want to talk without having information. For property tax values, are these ADUs assessed separately, or is this an addition to the primary house?
I can only imagine property values are going to go up when you have an ADU. It's based on the amount of building you have a lot of times and what the building is valued at. And you're also going to be making income on it if you own the property. So certainly property values would go up and taxes would go up, which,
You're seeing this as an enhancement to a property? I would think,
yes.
I noticed the comment, dense development. In my mind, dense development is not an enhancement. It's more of a negative. My other question was in terms of sanitation purposes, most garages have electricity. Most that I know of don't have sewer and water. Who provides for that? Does the city have cost incurred in running extra sewer and water to these?
So those costs would be on the the person who wants to build this ADU is gonna have to run a water line to the water main.
Pretty
Right,
expensive.
they're gonna have to have sewer lateral that
Right.
goes to there. And you're correct that a garage cannot be easily converted to that, right? It's on a slab. Those utilities are gonna freeze if they're not protected. So there's gonna need to be a lot of insulation and things that would go in.
Just fact gathering.
Yeah.
Speak later. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So again, I'm struggling a little bit with the public hearing aspect is because I think this is the chance for the public to get questions answered. And I know to have plan commission debate, we need to close the public hearing, but.
I guess,
So I guess just one other, I mean, does anybody else in the public have any other questions that we haven't answered yet? Yeah. So I'm not hearing any.
Okay. I think that we can close the public hearing and then proceed to discussion. And I think we got the question answered about kind of the sort of the hygiene on how to keep track of potential changes.
So
And I
is-
think we get, so I guess my question, when this is, and this is getting in the way of showing the map, but I think I heard agreement on restricting the livable space in a coach house to 1,000 square feet. But, and then there was a question, do we need to vote on that, or is it sufficient to have that be a consensus?
I think like David was saying, you kind of if you have consensus on these, you kind of make a list of them. And then I think you can vote on it all together.
There's only one, I'd say we can do it in one, but if there's multiple.
So,
Right.
yeah, I can go ahead and make a list of those right now.
Right, okay.
Okay.
I'd just like to bring up one thing about what you kind of reminded me before of the numbering system. And that's, we're making a whole new division out of this. Division 10, which kind of makes it hard to read for one thing. I mean, so our ordinance is divided into different divisions, like zoning is Article 3, but then the divisions inside of it, there's one, Division 1 is general, Division 2 is basically residential or conservation, 3 is commercial. 4 is permitted uses, then Division 5 is telecommunications, Division 6 is stuff like density, natural resources. Division 7 is planning and developments, Division 8 is cannabis businesses, and Division 9 is the Moline Center form-based code stuff, which is a very different code than the rest of the zoning code. So I would rather, if we had to do numbering system, is to put it under 35-3411, which is accessory accessory residential uses, because it's exactly what it's called almost in the title itself.
Yeah.
Instead of a whole new division.
And then Sean, your thinking is that all this language that would have been in Division 10 is just simply under the land use regulations for that particular land use. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, it's with that numbering system. And then we could also put it in the table as such too.
So this
would be in the
right.
R2.
So this is kind of it is an important discussion to have now with the way it's proposed to you. So, but in terms of how we organize the zoning code, and keep in mind, we're planning on having a new zoning code in a few years, but I think what Sean's suggesting is probably a good idea to have this land use would get added if you decide to do this. Land use gets added to the table. And then all of these things that we're talking about in the new division would just be under the land use regulations for an ADU. So it would still capture anything you want to have in this ordinance. But would just be shown in the code a little slightly different way.
But with this approval, we would be changing the section number is what he's saying. We need
Yes.
to have that as part of our change.
No. We'll deal with the codification afterwards. The substance is really what's important here.
Okay.
Yeah, because ultimately it's council that is going to approve it. Yeah.
That makes it easier for today.
Yeah.
Is there any other changes outside of the coach house 1,000 square feet? I guess I'll start and say I don't personally. I don't know if maybe go around and offer up.
Well, I'm sorry that we lost the public, but I certainly have the concern about the setback, because in some of the neighborhoods where the neighborhoods were designed with more open space, I don't know that I don't personally think a setback is sufficient to account for that. And that was speaking, I think, to kind of the different nature of the neighborhoods. There are neighborhoods that were designed around open space, and even with a setback, a patio, if someone built an ADU with a patio, that patio could go right up to the property line, right? Because there's not a setback requirement for a patio.
Right. I mean, yeah, it's not going to be the same setbacks for as a building. You're correct.
Yeah. So what I go back to is, and this is along the lines of what the person who's the former police officer brought up, that it's one thing when you've got an attachment to an existing dwelling. It's another thing when you're building a new property or a new structure in a yard where it's adjacent to other people's yards and affecting other people's.
Do you have a proposed change that we could vote
Well,
on?
again, I'll go back. I'll throw out special use permits again for unattached ADUs.
I'm going to be a no vote personally.
So help me understand what's so the conversation was about, it's $50,000 at least to build a new
Is this a
structure.
change to the ordinance? I'm not sure what.
It would be, so adding a special use permit for a special use permit requirement for a detached ADU would be a change to the ordinance draft that's in front of us.
Say we could
Because-
vote on it then.
Yeah. Well, we can add, well, I think what Mr. Sommer was saying, we don't have to vote on it. I think it's a consensus question.
Oh, okay.
So so again, because what I'm trying to react to is what I think I hear from the public.
Yeah. So I guess, does anybody have changes to what staff proposed? Because I know we put those side setbacks in there based on some of your feedback we got. So does anybody have changes to those, or as the chair suggested, I guess, to having that be a special use?
Because the setbacks would be only for the
detached and the coach
and the
house.
coach house, which are the ones where you'd be building, potentially building in a space that's, affects the privacy, view, et cetera, of neighboring properties.
So that's under section 2, 1 and 2.
Yeah. So I guess the question is, if you want to change those setbacks, or if you want there to be a special use requirement, I think, is there anybody else that's in support of that?
Sounds like, yeah, okay. And, or change to the setback, we think that this is an adequate setback?
Do.
Recognize that there could be like patio or other accoutrements that would
Yeah,
go right up to the
It'd be
property.
some of the similar things, I guess, that you would see in somebody's backyard if there was just a house there, right?
Okay. The Oak Park ordinance does call for property number, house number. And we have not, this does not address the house number.
Speaking of attorney, it's probably in a different code that requires that, but if you want to add that requirement, and then we can just make sure that it's somewhere else before it gets to city council.
Yeah.
If you want to if plan commission wants to.
Chris,
Yes.
sorry. So that's a lot of times that's something when the building application comes in for the new dwelling unit,
Exactly.
it goes through a process whereby like police and fire, assign, an address based on the addresses either existing or how they're set up in a neighborhood. Sometimes staff does it, but that's like an internal thing. It's an administrative thing tied to the building permit.
Yeah, and that's what I think it is, but I'm guessing right now without seeing it in the
Okay.
ordinance. But yeah, I think it's not a concern.
Planning assigns the addresses now.
I just meant where.
Yeah, I mean, that's common.
Where
Yep.
it's in the code, I guess, is what I was saying.
So it's not overlooked. It's simply taken care of in a different part of the code. Because again, I think the conversation had been, it's important for fire.
Mhm.
Yes.
I know that sometimes the existing address might need to be changed in order to make the new address, such as if there wasn't an extra number, you might have to have the existing address be whatever address, suite 1, and then new address be whatever address, suite 2, if they had to be the same address. So I don't know if you want to notify the homeowner that their current address might change as well.
Yeah,
I know
I think
that causes conflict sometimes.
would still be worked out probably with the internal
Okay.
policy.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So I build an ADU and I might have to change my address.
Possibly.
Okay. With regard to enforcement.
I think we should avoid that at all costs.
Yeah.
I don't think we want to be. I think you could just have like the same address -A or something, but you guys could work that out internally.
I can't even get my mail delivered to 34th Avenue B Court because of the B. So if you threw another wrinkle on there, it would make it really tough. We heard some comments on enforcement. Chris and I had a conversation about it. Right now, the ordinance draft says $1,000 to $1,500 per day, and we don't have clarity. I think you don't know why. You said that's higher than. That's a higher fine per day than some other ordinance violations.
Yeah.
But you're not sure why it's got the range.
My personal opinion would be to leave the fine numbers out of it because we already have code enforcement that we can do. We already have rules on the books for code enforcement. But I certainly wouldn't suggest it going higher than what it's in there now. If you thought, hey, 1,000 is too high as a minimum, I don't think that's actually the minimum anyway, probably. But you could put it from 0 to 1,500 or something. I'd feel better about that. But
Well, and it says, it doesn't say shall, so it makes it says will, and this is a very lawyery thing, but other parts of the code say shall, that, a fine shall be levied as opposed to will. And then I just couldn't understand why it would be 1,000 to 1,500 rather than just being 1,000 or 1,500.
Yeah,
But we don't know where that came from.
Yeah,
it seems like.
Yeah, I'll just be honest.
Chair, well, actually, I could speak to that, Chair Graves, if you'd let me. That is actually from as Chris, I think, said earlier, it is from our first go around with ADU. And one of the reasons why it was set at that higher rate, at that higher level, is because there was this issue of wanting to make a strong statement about the enforceability of this ordinance and that violations of it have real consequences. So that's why it's set the way it is. You can set it at whatever. It doesn't have to be in there because generally the code has its own penalty provisions anyway, but it was specifically put in there to make it very clear that this is going to be a very strictly enforced ordinance, and where violations are found, there is a significant penalty attached to those, given the impact of, the use on neighboring uses and things like that.
I'm good with leaving it with this.
So I guess my question, should it say shall be, again, because I'm just looking at consistency with other ordinance provisions.
I drafted that. I typically use a stronger word will, but if the preference is shall, it can be shall.
Well, if you think will is stronger, that's fine. I just, again, was looking at consistency.
I'm good with will.
I'm good with
Okay.
Will.
Okay. And so the 1,000 to 1,500 would be discretion of staff. And again, you made the point, Chris, that has to be enforced, a judge has to agree to it.
Right.
Okay.
I guess I kind of wonder why it's in this, why would we have it in this ordinance? It's just sort of like the parking thing. These things should probably get covered elsewhere and then just
add a reiteration that, these are enforced. We want these to be done correctly and you must follow the rules. I mean, about being notified by your neighbors, I didn't have to notify my neighbors when I added onto my house, but I also had my permits hanging all over my house. And I was inspected on every single aspect.
Yeah.
So I had checkoffs, so I got my money back. And they were not light-footed me. And and back to you about the family thing about, well, you could have this kid, 3 kids, this, whatever, but the owner still has to occupy one or the other.
For sure.
There has to be an owner there. So
Well, I think that gets to the enforcement, because I think that's the question, is how will that be enforced? So if the owner moves out, and it becomes I guess at that point it becomes a
well, when
duplex.
it's registered and it goes with the house, right? Isn't that what we said?
Yep.
They
Yep.
get registered and that enforcement follows with the house.
Yeah, that gets recorded on the,
It gets recorded.
Right.
The
But if someone violates it, though, what is the recourse? Is it just the fine? I mean, you can't
Yeah,
force
it's gonna be
somebody, you
fining.
can't force somebody to move back into the house, presumably.
Yeah, it's going to be fining. That's all you have in this game.
Yeah.
So from a staff, we're fine with the enforcement language that's in there from a staff perspective.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
So far, we only have the 1,000 square foot is probably our change at this point.
Mhm.
Our addition.
Chris, you made the comment about one family detached dwelling in the definition. Is that, were you questioning, is that the word detached correct in there?
Yeah, where was that?
That's, well, it was on your PowerPoint,
I
which I
think
think
it's-
came from
I think it's
ordinance definition.
35-31001, number 3. I see a principal one-family detached dwelling. So that, it shouldn't have detached on
It
there.
shouldn't have detached. I think that might be in there more than one place.
We'll look for that.
So
We'll-
it's just
We'll look through that throughout.
yeah, okay.
Oh, do we need to have that in our change?
I think we can leave that to staff because that's
That
kind
could
of a,
just be a
kind of a
staff cleanup.
scrivener thing.
We'll
Yes,
the detached,
to just
yeah.
reconcile it. And what's the definition of livable space? Is there an ordinance definition of livable space?
That I think is really more of a building code.
I mean, it's the area of the rooms and the hallways and, yeah, interior
I
to
just
the
didn't know
unit,
if
not,
there's a definition that
yeah,
goes
not the
with that.
building footprint itself, but the actual square footage that you can live in.
And then did you get and maybe this becomes moot if you change the numbering, but there's an ellipsis in 35-31004. Do we know what that's?
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Well, that would mean that's, well, because it goes on to say section 5, section 6, so those are parts of the changing ordinance, not the ordinance that is the code. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, I think so.
So the next thing that says is it's basically a separable.
Okay,
If something is wrong with a part of the ordinance, then
Okay.
the rest of it remains.
so that's something Corporation Council will take care of and kind of going through the whole numbering and.
Yeah, they'll
Yeah,
review,
yeah,
they'll
okay.
review it again once we
Okay. Okay.
make our changes.
Okay, any other, so I think we just got, just other than some kind of conforming changes, we just got that one substantive change.
Yeah, so it's really only Craig's motion that he was about to make. I mean, I think that's really where we're at in terms of the changes you wanted to make. It's the 1,000 square feet for a coach house, basically setting the 1,000 square feet of.
All right, I'll give it a shot here. I'll make a motion to recommend the ordinance as written with the findings and facts of staff with a change to the coach house section indicating that it is the lesser of 1,000 square feet of livable space or the footprint of the ADU building itself.
Nice.
Fantastic. I will second that motion.
All right, motion by Commissioner Logan, second by Commissioner Wermuth. Roll call vote.
Okay, Allison,
Aye.
Purple,
Aye.
Logan,
Aye.
Moyer,
Aye.
Silas,
Aye.
Trevor.
Aye.
And Werman.
Right.
Okay, the motion passes.
So we're going to do our best to get this on the council agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Remind me, Jennifer, was that April 23rd? I know I'm putting you on the spot. Look at the calendar, but it'll be the next available date we can get it on. We just have to do it by Friday, basically. If we can get it done by Friday, it'll be on. So,
Yeah, well, it's not a lot. I mean,
April 23rd, yes.
yes, so
Okay.
that's what we're shooting for. April
Okay.
23rd is the committee of the whole.
okay. All right, that concludes, agenda item 6. Is there any old business? Sorry.
I forgot we have to follow the rest
The
of
way we
the
do,
agenda.
yeah, but it's not that much.
Premature.
Is there any old business? Is there any new business? Reports and communications, director's report.
I have nothing for today.
Okay. Other reports, upcoming applications, Sean.
We have a variance for a sign for McDonald's that would be down by the Kohl's and Target. Basically, the sign would be too close the way they're proposing it.
I keep wondering when they're.
It has to be 150 feet, but they want to reduce it to 105 because it's on a very compact lot, so.
So that's why I said
And will
it.
that be at the next meeting?
Yes, it doesn't.
The 24th.
Okay.
On that one.
Okay.
Is,
So that is
no,
actually getting closer to maybe starting. I keep wondering.
Well, they could start the McDonald's without putting the sign in right away. I mean.
And so that next meeting is the 24th, so that will be on the agenda. Then for the next meeting.
Yes, the notice has gone out. The staff report is done for all intents and purposes. It might just have to be polished a little bit, but.
Okay.
It's about ready to go.
Madam Chair, I did forget one thing. I've got my municipal minute from Mansfield Link here, and there is a House Bill 4213 at the House, Illinois House right now. It's a ADU bill, local. Basically, they're considering prohibiting cities from limiting ADUs, and
Yeah, so it prohibits cities from prohibiting ADUs, right?
but it doesn't really say to what extent yet. So there's that. There's also a judicial review of zoning decisions, another bad bill. It kind of takes control away from cities. But anyway, those are out there.
Okay.
Just letting you know.
Okay. Public comment. There is staff here, but no members of the public, so no public comment. So adjournment is in order.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Commissioner Wormuth and Commissioner Moyer, all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Yeah.
So we appreciate it.
Good.
Well done. Good night.
Thank you. Thanks, Billy. Thanks, David.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. And I had a baby last Tuesday. It's Alessi Perez Loken.
Alessi?
Alessi, Alessi. So we've got a Ulani and Alessi.
Very cool.
Tuesday at 7:10 PM, 8 pounds, 1 ounce.
8-pounder.
How's mom?
Mom is doing very good. She's at home now, waiting for me to return.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. we saw it.
Slowly getting sleep.
Right, right.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very exciting. Let's see.
Actually, a grand home.
Thanks, Marcia.
That movie, The Twilight of the wasn't it?
With the vampires?
Yeah, wasn't it? What was?
I have never seen it.
Something like that. Anyway. Yeah, that's great. Good meeting.
Thanks, Cindy.
I think, shoot.
Yeah, is that?
Yeah, that was Mike Vinegar was in the next.
Okay.
Does anybody know him? I don't.